if she'd raised me the right way. And my extreme anger, for the way we were raised, wouldn't even allow me to send her on her way with the answer that she wanted. So it
Yeah.
was always a thing for us. I mean, I can just remember it was always a battle in the house. And I love my mother, don't get me wrong,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
it
Well,
was
that's why
always,
it's so messy, because
yeah,
you have these feelings, you love your family, but you're angry at the church, which really I believe anger is is covering sadness and grief.
of course.
It's easier to be angry than to be sad about it, right? We'd rather but the injustice and this, that, and the other thing. It's easier to stay in that mindset. But yeah, it's complicated and messy for sure.
Now, was your husband a part of it too, or did you meet him out?
Yeah, I met him when I went to BYU, Brigham Young University.
Uh,
And we met and I left the day after high school because I only applied to BYU because it was the church university. It never even entered my mind to go to another university. That's how Mormon I was. And we met like my second semester at BYU, and we were married, a year later at 20. I was married at 20, staying on the path, married in the temple, doing all the things. So he was, I should say he still is very much a member. We are no longer married.
okay.
But that was, yeah, it's hard to reconcile those two beliefs. And I was the one who left. I
Mhm.
was like, it was during kind of what I call my free fall. I'm out. I don't want anything to do with this. And the two of us have had talks about it, and it was kind of like he was collateral damage, so to speak,
Yeah.
of that, because it's such a mind F. I don't know. But you're on your podcast.
You can
You've heard
swear.
my
You can
podcast. I
swear.
do.
You can swear.
Yeah, it's literally a mind fuck. And so I just kind of wanted nothing to do with it. Why washed my hands. And there was even a time when I almost left completely, like my kids and everything, because I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm scared. You keep them in the church and whatever.
Mhm.
Um, Thankfully I didn't do that. But I had thoughts about that because it was so traumatic. This is what I mean. Like, you leave something that you had allegiance to and with, and you believed in with your soul, and to leave it feels so confusing and hard and messy.
Are your boys are still part of that as well? Or are they kind of just doing
I
it
have
on their
one in and one out.
own? Uh-huh.
They're now 20. How old are my kids now? 23 and 21.
Uh-huh.
And my 23-year-old is out of the church, doesn't go anymore, doesn't care to. And my 21-year-old, though, is very much a member. He served a Mormon mission, and he's getting married in the temple in December. So
Wow.
he's
Wow.
still,
So how's that dynamic with you and him and the son that's in?
yeah, it's I'm gonna say it's good. We kind of respect each other's everything, because I believe no one could have told me at 20 when I was getting married that the church is false and none of it's true and don't get married, that's too young. Like, I was 20 and I had all the answers to life.
Of course. Of course.
And so I figure with him, he's walking his own path. He knows I love him and I will never leave. I'm never going to not love him because he's in. If
Yeah.
I don't love him because he's in the church, then I'm the hypocrite,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
he has to figure his own puzzle out. And I will love him and support him along the way, just like I did when he was on a mission, just like I did when he was a child, with any decision in life. Because to me, I'm at the point where that trumps who's right or wrong with their religious beliefs.
Yeah. Good. That's awesome that you have that space for that because a lot of parents don't. Can you talk to me about the dynamic of one person in, whether it's Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormon, one
Yeah.
person in, one person out, and the
So
effect
in
that
a
has?
like a marriage relationship
Right,
kind of,
marriage.
yeah, I think that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
I left, so I'm not in a relationship where we are very much on the same page, my fiance and I, but I think it takes a lot of time and effort to allow the person to be who they are. So just like I explained with my son, um, I believe you can't convince anyone of anything. I had to come to my own awakening in my own time. And to be practical and logical and all those things about this, we have to understand that some people may never see what we see.
Yeah.
And like, I couldn't see it till I saw it. And so I can't force someone to see what I see, because that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing this we're not going to get political, but what's happening politically in our country is a good example of that. Doesn't matter what side you're on, you're just going to, it's like knocking your head against the wall. It's just, you can't convince anyone that their view is wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think in a relationship, to allow your partner to be who they are and to love them unconditionally means that you're not trying to change them or control them. You're holding them the space for them to learn and grow, because we're all learning. And what I believe now, I might not believe in 5 or 6 or 10 years, like we're constantly changing.
Yeah. It's
So
called growth.
yeah, right. You have to be able to allow, and if you're committed to keeping it that way, then it takes people giving and taking.
Yeah. That was a thing for us when I was a kid, and they would always talk about having an unbeliever versus a believer. And it always
Mm,
seemed to me the believer was just browbeating the unbeliever to, you're beating him or her right out of the door. And
yeah,
as a
yeah.
kid, I could see this, and I would often wonder what is wrong with the adults that they can't see this.
I know, because they're so in it. I think yeah, it's strange, especially when you're on the other side. But that's interesting that you as a kid could see it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's very insightful.
yeah,
I think that in a relationship, you have to have healthy boundaries. And so creating a boundary is for yourself. It's not for the other person. So if you're in a relationship and you need a boundary placed, so it's for your emotional health, your own emotional support. It's not about controlling them. It's just saying, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of an example of something that might come up. Maybe you can help me. But something that might come up that you're just like, no, I'm not going to the meeting on Sunday. I'm not participating in services anymore, or the ritual of the religion.
mhm,
Um, and this is my boundary, right? Now, if they don't agree with that, then the consequence is whatever you choose it to be. But I think creating healthy boundaries helps you maintain your individuality in the relationship, because I think what happens is, especially religiously, we're taught that you're one as a couple. And so what happens is we lose our own autonomy. Like I mean, I felt like I was a partner with my husband during that time period, but to have my own autonomy was a little bit foreign to me, because we were one in purpose, right?
yeah,
And so I think when you leave, you're like, oh, I can have my own opinions. I can have my own beliefs. I can create my own, which is very counterintuitive to when you grow up in it, I
yeah,
think, because you're supposed to be of one mind.
yeah. First of all, did you just use the word meeting? Did you just in relation to Jehovah's Witness?
Oh, well, we'd go to church meetings. Is that
Okay,
is that a
okay.
word you use too?
It is. I was just getting ready to say she's done her homework. She has done her homework. But speaking on autonomy, I remember, when I first left, I quit going to the meetings about 17, 18 years old. And, you're in that structure and you're in that cocoon.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out into the world, and I just thought, we're also taught it's a scary place.
Yes.
I remember walking out into this big place, and I thought, this is scary, because you didn't know what to do. You
Yeah.
didn't know how to think about it. You're taught all these people, if they're not part of your religion, they're horrible, and it was just a
Yeah.
really scary thing. And it took years to start, figuring things out, a lot of trial and error, mostly
Hmm.
error.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was difficult. So, you mentioned boundaries, and that's something that most people don't learn till they're older, right?
Right.
And these
Well,
are
but
things
yeah.
that they can't teach in those settings, because they'll never get a hold, keep the hold on the people. So I
Yeah.
think you're right about that. And it's something that, honestly, if I'm being honest with you, it's something I learned over the last 5 or 10 years about boundaries, and because it is for you,
Yep.
and it bodes well for you, and then it moves over into your partner. So
Hmm.
I definitely understand that. So the last question I'm going to ask you, because we've already moved along pretty quickly here, from a relationship standpoint, I want to get back to the lying part of things.
Yeah.
Why is it that some people can deal with it and move on and be great, and some people kind of fall by the wayside, the entire relationship, the kids, everything?
Because it's hard as hell.
The easy
And
answer.
I think that what happens is I've kind of coined this term, the residual effect. So we leave the organization, we leave the church, but we have so much conditioning that we go forward in life still making decisions with part of our brain in the old paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard. And so then we have the guilt and the shame and the like feeling like a failure and scared and stuck in fear. And I think that's what helps you from moving forward, is because we spend that time just so scared we don't know how to move forward. And truthfully, the freedom comes when you start doing your own cognitive improvement. You start getting into your brain and seeing the deep neural pathways you've created in your brain of how life is supposed to be it's different now, but it's easy to default to those old settings when we're trying to move forward. And that's why we feel stuck, because we're trying to move forward, but we don't have the tools necessarily of how to get into your head and start creating new neural pathways that help you move forward. So we're trying to like use the old tool, the old paradigm to move forward, but we don't believe in it, but we don't know that there's another way. Like you brought up fear a little while ago. Mormons have a conference, what's called General Conference, every 6 months. The prophet and his apostles, they all speak. Members gather all around the world and they hear the same messages. The prophet of the church this last time gave a quote, and I'm not doing it verbatim, but something along the lines of life without God is full of fear and fearful. Life with God is peaceful. And when you have, we have all lessons about that growing up. When that's so deep in your head, and like you were talking about, you were scared when you go away, like those types of thoughts, like that's just a thought. It's someone else's thought they want you to think. That kind of thinking keeps you stuck. It keeps you from moving forward because you're so afraid, because you don't know what's going to happen. And you've been taught that the world's a scary place. We were taught to be in the world, but not of it. Right. Yeah. And actually the world's amazing.
It
Even
is,
with
right?
all what we have going on right now, it's a fascinating time to be alive. Look at this. Humans are like losing their minds.
Right.
Because we're trying to figure out the pandemic and politics, at least here in America. And I think this is fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy fun because we get to see humans figuring problems out. And I think when you leave the faith, you leave Jehovah's Witness or Mormonism or whatever one, you're trying to figure a new puzzle out in a new paradigm that you haven't practiced for your whole lifetime.
Yes.
So you're a newbie going out into that big scary world that's not scary. You're still who you are. You still have all the goodness you had in you before. You're just thinking about it differently. So staying stuck is what a lot of people do, because also they blame. You stay stuck when you're blaming. So you keep blaming the organization. You keep blaming your family members, instead of taking responsibility for what it takes to move forward. It's so much easier to blame people.
Yeah.
We'd all rather blame.
Right. There's actually more, from my estimation, now that I've been out, there's actually more positive things happening in the world than there are negative. It's just they promote the negative things.
Yes, I agree.
As far as those neural pathways you're talking about, there's a guy, and you probably heard him, is Bruce Lipton.
Oh,
yeah. And he talks about that all the time. It's the same way you had that stuff pounded into you, so you can do it a new way and pound some things into your new way. So I want to leave it at that and let people know that you can change and you can get better and be better. And it's because of people like you, that you hold people's hands and you bring them along. You even bring me along sometimes. So I steal from you. I'll be honest with you.
Good. Use it all. Yeah. Well,
At this point, go ahead.
The good work you're doing in the world. We need all of our voices. I think collectively, whatever pathway you're waking up from, like we're all collectively just trying to help each other, because it is a beautiful world. There's so much to live for and to look forward to.
Yes, indeed. So at this point, do you want to, talk about your podcast or your website, your Instagram?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a podcast called Ex-Mormonology. I coined that because, like we've just been talking about, you're learning something new. So the study after, and I have a lot of Jehovah's Witness actually that listen to me. So I love it because it's the same, right? Your brain has been challenged.
Yes.
And so I figure ex-Mormonology, life after religion, needs a little bit of study. So it's very cognitive based on literal things that help you get through stuff. And then my partner and I, we've had some fun with it. We have a few bonus episodes where we call irreverent, because if you can't laugh at yourself,